Hello everyone, Charcoal here, and welcome to the 4th anniversary of the channel. Every year I've done a special video to celebrate this occasion. We had the Wings of Fire Arc 3 Mega Review in 2021, the Arc 2 Mega Review in 2022, and the huge series ranking list last year in 2023. And 2024 will be no exception. Wings of Fire is a big series, with 15 books, 2 super editions, 4 short stories, and a guidebook, so naturally there's a ton of lore and story content sprinkled throughout these books. So much, in fact, that I want to try and consolidate pretty much all of it in one place, and that's what I'm doing today. All of the information I discuss here is pulled from both the books and the fandom wiki, along with a bit of headcanon, but I will state when something I talk about isn't confirmed. I will also be glossing over stuff that isn't important to the timeline. As much as I loved the passage about the SandWing Succession crisis, I don't think you really need to know about that to understand the rest of the story. If I tried to cover every single minor detail, we'd be here all day. But I think that's enough prelude. Welcome everyone to the complete Wings of Fire timeline. Chapter 1, The Fall of Humanity, just over 5,000 years ago. In the time before time, the continent that would later become known as Pyria was ruled by humans, who were divided into 3 empires. The Diamond Empire, the Jaguar Empire, and a third that we never learned the name of. Dragons at this point were a rare sight. They were very different from the tribes we know today, but we do know that there were dragons who could breathe fire, dragons who lived underwater, and dragons with the ability Leaf Speak, which allowed them to communicate with plants and stimulate their growth. Dragons would usually live alone or in small families in secluded dens, sometimes with a little treasure hoard for good measure, and that was about it. There were plenty of animals to hunt and nobody really bothered them, so they were content with life. But that wouldn't last. As the 3 empires continued to expand, they ended up at war with each other over territory. They hunted more and more prey that dragons usually ate, and released a lot of smoke from their factories. The dragons were starting to get fed up, but in that unnamed empire, a man named Cottonmouth would finally take things too far. Cottonmouth was a researcher by trade who worked his way up to become a close advisor to the Emperor. With the war locked in a stalemate, he proposed the idea of stealing dragon eggs, intending to control the newborn dragons and use them as weapons. All of his attempts to control the Dragonets failed, and as the other empires began following his example, they would incur the wrath of a dragon known today as the First Dragon Queen. When her egg was stolen, this dragon didn't just want revenge, she wanted to burn humanity to the ground. She traveled the continent and recruited other dragons, and her army became known as the First Dragon Tribe. This tribe began attacking and utterly destroying any human settlement they could find, marking the beginning of the Scorching. As a unified force, nothing could hope to stand in the dragons' way. For the dragons, it was a resounding success. For humanity, the death toll was enormous, and society as they knew it was simply gone. Cottonmouth and a group of his supporters fled the continent with one last dragon egg in Cottonmouth's possession, but more on that later. Precious few surviving humans were left on Pyria, but it hardly mattered anymore. The world belonged to the dragons now, and would for the rest of time. The dragons began counting years based on how long it's been since the Scorching, with the notation being AS, standing for After Scorching. In that case, our calendar starts here, at 0 AS. Chapter 2, The Aftermath of the Scorching. 0 AS to about 1000 AS. Before we talk about the dragons, let's explore what happened to Cottonmouth. He and his followers sailed west and arrived on a new continent free of dragons, today known as Pantala. He continued experimenting on the dragon egg he had saved, and in his research he discovered a plant that was able to control ants to spread its seeds. A good bit of genetic engineering later, and Cottonmouth was able to control small animals with it, and eventually some of his own human supporters. Over time, he moved his people underground and took up residence in a cave called the Abyss, making his throne room there. The plant became known as the Breath of Evil, and when Cottonmouth's dragon egg finally hatched, the baby turned out to have Leaf Speak, and the Breath of Evil used it as a battery to take over both Cottonmouth and the Dragonet, which he had named Lizard. Cottonmouth, Lizard, and the Breath of Evil were now trapped together as an entity called the Othermind, and Cottonmouth quickly got to work covering the entirety of Pantala with the Breath of Evil and taking control of every animal on the continent. We'll come back to him much later. Meanwhile, on Pyria, the dragons had done it. They had united to fight a common enemy, and you know what that means. Time to immediately start fighting each other. It's been stated that the Scorching was followed by 500 years of chaos and warfare as the dragons spread across the continent. Presumably over the course of the first 1,000 years, kingdoms were established and the dragons developed into most of the tribes we know today. Mudwings, Seawings, Rainwings, Nightwings, Sandwings, Icewings, Skywings, Leafwings, and Beetlewings. It's also worth mentioning here that dragons mature very quickly, reaching adulthood at age 7, and they can live to be around 100, sometimes older. At some point during this period, a few Icewings developed a rather curious power, animus magic. Its exact origins are unknown, but it is extremely powerful, allowing the user to enchant just about anything to do just about anything. The only exception being that they can't bring someone back from the dead. It's also been said to destroy a dragon's soul the more they use it, causing them to eventually go insane. Once animus magic was discovered, those dragons were bred into the Icewing royal family and carefully monitored, only allowed to use their power once during a ceremony where they would create a gift to benefit the whole tribe. As we start approaching the 1,000 year mark, peace between the tribes started to break down, and 2 whole tribes were about to disappear off the continent. Chapter 3, The Legend of the Hive, about 1000 AS. We don't have a confirmed date for this, but I placed it here because it had already faded into legend during Darkstalker's time, just as Darkstalker had in the present day, so I just went another 2,000 years back from Darkstalker. Presumably some sort of large-scale conflict was happening on Pyria, large enough that the Leafwings and Beetlewings felt their only choices were to either get wiped out or flee the continent. And so they did, moving their whole tribes west until they arrived on the shore of Pantala. At this point, Pantala was full of lush forests, but it was also covered in the vines of the Breath of Evil. Cottonmouth was none too pleased to see dragons again, so he sent swarms of bugs and animals to attack them. The dragons fought back and realized that clearing away the vines caused the animals to gradually return to normal. Over time, the dragons ridded the surface of Pantala of the Breath of Evil, with its only remnants being located in the heart of the poison jungle. With Pantala now safe to inhabit, the Leafwings and Beetlewings went about establishing their own community together, and they would live in relative peace for the next couple millennia. As the story of this mass pilgrimage faded into legend, Pantala became known as the Lost Continent. Chapter 4, The Era of Darkstalker, about 3000 AS. Here we have our first big section, because this is where we get into actual story content. By this point, a few Animus dragons had popped up in other tribes besides the Icewings. Let's start with Jerboa of the SandWings. Queen Scorpion had Jerboa under her thumb and made her cast several spells. One of these was the Eye of Onyx, which Scorpion had intended to use to keep herself in power. Instead, Jerboa enchanted it to choose dragons who were fit to be queen regardless of royal blood, and kill anyone unworthy who tried to take the throne. Remember the Eye of Onyx, it will become important much later on. Jerboa during this time was pretty level-headed, so when Scorpion started demanding more and more of her, including spells that would harm the other tribes, Jerboa refused and fled the kingdom. We'll come back to Jerboa in a bit. For now, let's pivot to the Sea Wing's first recorded animus, Prince Albatross. When he was 3 years old, his sisters, Sapphire and Lagoon, saw him playing with a clamshell. Sapphire tried to take it, and Albatross told it to bite all of her claws off. And thus the Sea Wings knew they had an animus on their hands. Sapphire was confined to a remote island where she would live out the rest of her days descending into madness. Lagoon eventually became queen and made Albatross her servant, and the Talons of Power ceremony was created to find any Dragonets who had animus magic so no accidents like Sapphire's would happen again. Additionally, the Sea Wings had 2 palaces at this point. The Deep Palace, which was their main underwater home, and the Island Palace to host visitors from other tribes. Albatross began constructing a third, the Summer Palace, by enchanting a tree to grow into the structure over many years. In the Icewing tribe, they had 2 animus dragons, Queen Diamond and her son, Prince Arctic. When a band of Nightwing diplomats visited the kingdom, a Nightwing named Foeslayer was tasked with seducing Arctic to get him to leave the Icewings and introduce animus magic to a Nightwing bloodline. This plan worked wonders, and Arctic fled the Icewing kingdom with Foeslayer, leaving Queen Diamond beyond furious and eventually causing a war between the 2 tribes. Something you need to understand about animus magic is that it is hereditary, but the chances of a Dragonet hatching with magic get smaller and smaller the farther you get from the last direct animus ancestor. Diamond had other relatives, but the Icewings had such bad genetic luck that they never saw another animus again. Arctic and Foeslayer moved to the Night Kingdom and had 2 eggs. Darkstalker hatched when all 3 moons were full, a brightest night, and thus received both powers Nightwings can have, telepathy and foresight, along with inheriting his father's animus magic. His sister Whiteout would hatch the following night. Back in the Sea Wing tribe, Albatross's grandson Fathom got tested in the Talons of Power ceremony and was found to be the tribe's second known animus. He apprenticed under Albatross for a few years while growing close with the love of his life, Indigo. But then, one fateful night, Queen Lagoon was holding a meeting in the Island Palace with some Skywing diplomats to settle a territory dispute. On that night, Albatross finally snapped in an incident known today as the Royal Sea Wing Massacre. Lagoon, both of Fathom's parents, one of the Skywings, and a number of other Sea Wings all met their end before Fathom finally managed to kill Albatross. Fathom's sister Peril, as the only heir left alive, became the new queen. Indigo got the credit for killing Albatross, and Fathom was isolated from the tribe after they'd all seen what animus magic could do to a dragon. The island palace was completely abandoned as many dragons now believed Albatross's ghost haunted it, and sometime later the Summer Palace was completed and became the Sea Wing's main palace above water. In the Night Kingdom, the now 4-year-old Darkstalker met and began dating another Nightwing named Clearsight. Clearsight had hatched under one full moon and received the power of foresight, but more powerful foresight than anyone in the tribe had seen before, able to trace the entire tribe's extinction down to what she had for breakfast. Around this time, Darkstalker enchanted a scroll to contain all of his animus magic within it, allowing the user to cast spells by writing in it. He did this to calm Clearsight's nerves and protect his soul after they learned of the Royal Sea Wing massacre. Darkstalker's relationship with his father Arctic was a tense one. Arctic eventually told Queen Vigilance about his son's power, and Vigilance arranged with Peril to have Fathom come to mentor Darkstalker and teach him to be responsible with his powers. Indigo came with Fathom as a guard. She didn't trust Darkstalker whatsoever, and Darkstalker began making plans to get rid of her. Part of this included making himself immortal and invincible to stop her from killing him. A while later, Darkstalker created the Dream Visitors, 3 sapphire stars that allowed the users to visit other dragons' dreams while they sleep. These will also be important for later. Not long after that, Queen Diamond enchanted Darkstalker's mother Foeslayer from afar to come to the Ice Kingdom, where Diamond imprisoned her in a cave, frozen to be kept alive for eternity. Eventually, the Diamond Trial was created, where the last place dragon in the Icewing rankings could challenge the first place dragon, and they would be sent into Foeslayer's cave to fight her and each other. Sometime later, Indigo disappeared, and Fathom found a note from her saying she was going back to the Sea Kingdom and no longer loved him. This was a trick by Darkstalker, as Indigo was actually trapped inside a wooden dragon carving on Fathom's desk. Queen Diamond offered Arctic one final deal: give up his daughter Whiteout and have her marry into the Icewings in exchange for Foeslayer's freedom. Arctic started to go through with this, and Darkstalker was furious. He enchanted Arctic to obey his every command, put him up on a stage, and told him to disembowel himself in front of the whole Nightwing tribe. Clearsight was horrified, but in all the chaos, she managed to get her hands on Darkstalker's scroll. She gave it to Fathom, who enchanted a copper wire bracelet for Clearsight to use to put Darkstalker to sleep forever. When Clearsight left, Fathom read through the scroll and realized Indigo was in the carving on his desk, freeing her. The two confessed their love for each other and fled the Night Kingdom, taking Darkstalker's scroll with them as they went to settle on an island south of the rainforest. Meanwhile, Clearsight met with Darkstalker and slipped the bracelet on his arm, causing him to fall asleep indefinitely to get around his immortality. She hid him in a cave in Agate Mountain and waited for an earthquake to strike, collapsing the cave and burying Darkstalker forever. Clearsight was then struck with visions of a distant continent, the lost continent of Pantala, and a new life she could have there, and so she too left across the sea. We'll come back to her in a minute. The Nightwings, fearing Darkstalker's eventual return, fled their kingdom for a volcanic island. The exact location of the island is never shown on any map, but we know it's to the north of Pyria, as dragons later cross the sea from it and land in the Sky Kingdom. The tribe would keep the island secret for generations to come. Whiteout fled with the Nightwings and went on to start a family, and Fathom and Indigo had kids of their own, whose descendants presumably worked their way back into the Sea Wing tribe eventually. Before we wrap up this period, let's come back to Jerboa. At some point after Darkstalker, Queen Scorpion met her end from a magically induced heart attack courtesy of her former servant. Jerboa desired a child of her own, so she enchanted an animal egg to hatch into a dragonet clone of her, Jerboa II. But she went wrong. We don't know details, that is literally all the info we have. Jerboa III, nicknamed Boa, was a success, and the two lived for several centuries after Jerboa I made them immortal. Boa was reset to a dragonet multiple times and eventually realized what her mother was doing to her. Jerboa had made a scroll for her magic similar to Darkstalker, and Boa found it and made herself an animus too. She used a set of enchanted porcupine quills to freeze Jerboa solid and bury her beneath their hut. Unfortunately, Jerboa put one last spell on her daughter, to lose part of her body whenever she cast a spell. Because of this, Jerboa III didn't use her magic much and lived mostly by herself in her hut on the shore of the Sand Kingdom. Man, this was a long one. Let's go back and talk about Clearsight again. Chapter 5, The Evolution of Pantala, about 3000 AS to about 4960 AS. When we last left the Leafwings and Beetlewings, they were living together in harmony in the forests of Pantala. Right after putting Darkstalker to sleep, Clearsight crossed the sea from Pyria and arrived on the east coast of the Lost Continent, where she met a Beetlewing named Sunstreak. They had several dragonets together, and over time Clearsight mated with many more Beetlewings and had many more children. Clearsight lived well over 100 years, and near the end of her life she wrote down a collection of her visions of the next 1000 years in the Book of Clearsight, entrusting it to her descendants. After Clearsight's passing, Pantala was relatively peaceful for nearly another 1500 years, and the tribes, the Beetlewings in particular, honored Clearsight like a deity. The Beetlewings saw some changes as a result of Clearsight having so many kids, as they started evolving differently from the others until they essentially became a very large, biologically separate group. About 500 years before present day, the Beetlewings were officially declared extinct and split into two tribes. Those descended from Clearsight became the Hivewings and had most of the Beetlewings' old abilities. Those not descended from Clearsight became the Silkwings, who visually resembled the Beetlewings the most but lost most of their biological weapons except for spinning silk. The Silkwings, Hivewings, and Leafwings eventually developed their own separate kingdoms. Fast forward to about 50 years before present day, and their queens were Monarch, Wasp, and Sequoia respectively. By this point, the final prophecy in the Book of Clearsight had passed about a millennia ago, but Queen Wasp of the Hivewings falsely claimed that the book stated the other two tribes were supposed to submit to Hivewing rule. Queen Monarch of the Silkwings believed her and abdicated immediately, and she would spend the rest of her days in a Hivewing prison cell. Queen Sequoia of the Leafwings demanded to see evidence from the book that Wasp's claim was true, but when she refused to reveal it, Sequoia in turn refused to surrender. Thus began the Tree Wars. Wasp set about deforesting most of Pantala, the only place left untouched being the Poison Jungle. During this time, a leaf speaker and close advisor to Sequoia named Hawthorne rediscovered the Breath of Evil and tried to come up with a plan to use it to end the war. During a diplomatic meeting, some of the plant was snuck into Wasp's food and she ate it, falling under Cottonmouth's control. Hawthorne's hope was that it would allow the Leafwings to mind control Wasp and make her surrender, but instead they gave Wasp the ability to control others by injecting them. Sequoia was furious and banished Hawthorne to the middle of the Poison Jungle to find a cure, where he would spend the next several decades gradually falling under the other mind's influence. The war was lost, and the Leafwings retreated into the Poison Jungle for the foreseeable future. Eventually, they split into two factions. Queen Sequoia led the Sapwings, who lived deep in the jungle and saw fit for the tribe to keep to themselves for their own survival. Sequoia's now former top general Lyndon led a militaristic group called the Poison Wings, who lived closer to the edge of the jungle and vowed revenge on the Hivewings, occasionally carrying out covert attacks against them. When Lyndon eventually died to a poisonous plant, her daughter Belladonna took over the faction in her place. Outside of the Poison Jungle, Pantala belonged to Wasp, and she ruled with an iron talon. But that's not the only major war we'll be covering today. Chapter 6: The War of SandWing Succession. 4992 AS to 5011 AS. Buckle in, we've got a lot to get through. At this point, the current SandWing Queen was Queen Oasis, but before we get into the actual war itself, we need to talk about Palm. Palm was a cook in the SandWing stronghold and entered into a frowned-upon relationship with one of Oasis' sons, Smolder. She attempted to elope with him, but he never showed, so she fled the stronghold pregnant with his egg. The egg would hatch into a dragonet named Onyx, who will come back into our story much later. One seemingly random night, three humans, Heath, Stone, and Rose, broke into the SandWing Palace and attempted to steal some treasure. Oasis found them, but ended up being killed by Stone. Rose was injured and had to be left behind, and Oasis' son Smolder kept her as a pet, while Heath and Stone got away with some treasure. When they got back to their village, Heath took the credit for killing Oasis and became known as the Dragon Slayer. Eventually, the SandWings would track down their village and scorch it, and Heath led his followers below ground, where they created a new village named Valor. Oasis' three daughters, Blister, Blaze, and Burn, fought over who should become the next queen, and it would evolve into a full-blown war. Burn forced her sisters out of the palace and made it into her own stronghold, along with making an alliance with the Skywings. Blaze allied herself with the Icewings, and Blister allied herself with the Seawings and Mudwings. Every time I bring this up, I get people in the comments trying to correct me, but the Mudwings were originally allied with Blister. Read Assassin, please. Burn and Blister each had their own handfuls of Sandwings, but most of the tribe chose to side with Blaze. The Rainwings stayed out of it, as would the Nightwings, for now at least. Several years into the war, the Nightwing volcano erupted and destroyed part of their palace. The Nightwings had it rough at this point. There was dwindling food on the island, and so much ash blocking the sky for a long time now meant their eggs weren't being exposed to moonlight to give them powers. That eruption was a wake-up call that they needed to find a new home, and fast. Queen Battlewinner worked with her closest advisor Moroseer to come up with a plan. The rest of the continent didn't know the Nightwings no longer had powers, and Moroseer took advantage of that, falsifying a prophecy about 5 Dragonets of Destiny who would hatch on the next brightest night and emerge once they reached adulthood to choose a new SandWing queen. Not long after the prophecy was devised, Battlewinner got into a fight with an Icewing who blasted frost breath down her throat. The queen was confined to a cauldron of lava to prevent it from freezing her, and only her closest subjects knew her secret. Her daughter Greatness essentially became her mouthpiece, and Moroseer acted as her main enforcer. But now that they had the prophecy, the Nightwings needed to ensure that the war lasted long enough to see it come true. They began assassinating specific targets to prevent one of the sisters from becoming too powerful and ending the war early. 11 years into the war, a young Nightwing named Deathbringer assassinated Commander Tempest of the Sea Wings. Blister blamed it on the Mudwings, causing them to break their alliance, and Byrne pressured them into joining her instead. Shortly after, one of Byrne's soldiers, Dune, was injured in battle, and her top general Sixclaws defected and fled with Dune to a town called the Scorpion Den, where both of them would end up working with a crime boss known as Thorn. Eventually, the Nightwings set their sights firmly on a new home, the Rainforest. Just one problem: the Rainwings already lived there. The Nightwings had a plan though. Moonwatcher had been working closely with an anti-war organization called the Talons of Peace to coordinate the Dragonets of Destiny, meaning Moonwatcher would have the Dragonets under his thumb. The Nightwings made a secret alliance with Blister, promising to make the Dragonets choose her as the next SandWing Queen. In exchange, Blister would help the Nightwings invade the rainforest once the war was over. To prepare for this, the Nightwings had another ace up their sleeve: Stonemover, an animus descended from Whiteout. Stonemover constructed 2 enchanted tunnels, one from the volcanic island to the rainforest for the Nightwings to use, and one from the rainforest to the desert for Blister to eventually use. The Nightwings would begin using their tunnel to kidnap Rainwings and experiment on them, hoping to use their deadly venom as a weapon. During this time in the Sand Kingdom, Stonemover met Thorn, and the two fell in love and even conceived an egg, but Stonemover feared what his magic was doing to him and fled to Jade Mountain. He cast a spell to make any damage to his soul manifest on his body instead, which over the years would turn him mostly to stone. We're going to be spending some time bouncing around the different kingdoms leading up to the start of the series here, starting with the Skywings. Many years ago, a Rainwing named Chameleon was born with a snout deformity that prevented him from sleeping more than an hour at a time, and as a result was unable to change the color of his scales. He was cast out from the tribe for being a creep, after which he found Darkstalker's scroll and used it to create new forms for himself, one for each tribe. His Skywing form, Soar, started working for the tribe and mated with a soldier named Kestrel. They ended up producing a twin egg, and Skywings have a rare phenomenon that sometimes happens in twin eggs. One twin is born with too much fire, a condition called fire scales. Anything their scales touch starts burning. The other twin is born with no fire. This happened with Kestrel's egg, and Kestrel tried to flee the kingdom with her kids because fire scales were seen as too dangerous. Scarlet caught up with her and said she'd be pardoned if she killed one of the Dragonets. Scarlet pretended to kill the fireless one by dropping him in a river, but then Scarlet went back on the deal and ordered the Fire Scales twin killed as well. Kestrel tried to save her, but got burned and was forced to run away. Scarlet took the baby under her wing, naming her Peril and raising her to be a weapon. Meanwhile, the fireless baby was found by the river by a human girl named Wren, who had just been sacrificed to the dragons by her village. Kestrel came back for the kid, but couldn't find him as the two had already left, and she eventually ended up joining the Talons of Peace. Wren named the dragon Sky, and the two grew up together and learned each other's languages, so now we have a human who can speak dragon and a dragon who can talk to humans. Back in the Sky Palace, Scarlet at some point started fearing that her only remaining daughter, Tourmaline, would challenge her for the throne. 11 other daughters and Scarlet's 3 sisters had all tried and failed already, and by this point Scarlet had also killed her husband, so she couldn't just leave herself with 0 heirs. She had Chameleon use a piece of Darkstalker's scroll to turn Tourmaline into a new dragon, Ruby, who was programmed to be submissive and weak, so she posed no threat to Scarlet. Now we can finally move away from Scarlet for a bit and go back to the Sand Kingdom. Thorn wanted to keep her relationship with Stonemover secret, so when she laid her egg, she hid it and entrusted Dune with its location. Dune was one of Thorn's most trusted friends by now, but he was also secretly working for the Talons of Peace, and Thorn's egg was set to hatch on the brightest night. In the Sea Kingdom, Queen Coral's first daughter, Orca, was born an animus, but she kept it secret from everyone. She eventually challenged Coral for the throne without using magic, but Orca failed and was killed. She left behind one gift though, a statue of herself for the royal hatchery, secretly enchanted to kill any heirs to the throne when nobody was watching. Coral and her husband Gill kept trying for an heir year after year, but all the princess eggs wound up mysteriously smashed. Coral racked up quite a few princes during this time, 32 in total. We'll come back to one of them shortly. The brightest night was approaching, and the Talons of Peace were making final arrangements to raise the Dragonets of Destiny. 5 guardians were assigned: Kestrel of the Skywings, Dune of the Sandwings, Webbs of the Seawings, Veeder of the Icewings, and Asha of the Mudwings. The prophecy called for a Seawing, Nightwing, Skywing, Mudwing, and Sandwing. Moonwatcher provided the Nightwing egg after taking it from its mother, Farsight. Dune stole Thorn's egg to be the Sandwing, not knowing the baby inside was a hybrid. Webb stole a Seawing princess egg from the royal hatchery before Orca's statue smashed it. Asha bought a Mudwing egg from her sister Cattail and was caught in a battle on the way to the hiding place, delivering the egg safely but dying from her injury shortly after. Veeder had the hardest task: steal a Skywing egg from the palace. On his way out, he was intercepted by Byrne, who killed him and tossed him and the egg off a cliff. To replace the smashed Skywing egg, Webbs went and swiped a Rainwing egg from the rainforest. The Dragonets of Destiny hatched on schedule. Clay of the Mudwings, Tsunami of the Seawings, Glory of the Rainwings, Starflight of the Nightwings, and Sunny of the Sandwings. Speaking of eggs in the rainforest, a few years before the start of the series, Moroseer's mate, Secret Keeper, snuck through the tunnel from the volcano to the rainforest and hid her egg there, to protect it from the harsh conditions of the volcano. The egg hatched under 2 full moons, so the Dragonet, named Moonwatcher, ended up with telepathy and foresight. Secret Keeper would raise Moon alone in the rainforest for the next few years. During this stretch of time, in the Scorpion Den, Thorn purchased a Dragonet named Qibli from his abusive mother Cobra, raising him as her own son. Returning to the Seawings, one of Coral's many sons, Turtle, discovered he was also an Animus, but he too didn't want anyone finding out to avoid the spotlight. The year he turned 2 and would have been tested in the Talons of Power ceremony, he purposely gave himself food poisoning the night before, so he missed it. The following year, Coral had decided to guard her next princess egg personally while also being pregnant with one more. Since she was in the royal hatchery watching the egg at all times, Orca's statue never activated to kill it. Around this same time, Gill was captured in battle by the Skywings and imprisoned in Scarlet's arena, so between guarding the egg and mourning her husband, Coral cancelled the Talons of Power ceremony that year. The year Turtle turned 4, he could no longer avoid it. Coral insisted her newest daughter Anemone be tested despite only being a year old, so Turtle enchanted Anemone to be an Animus like him. Once Coral saw Anemone using magic, the ceremony was called off before Turtle was properly tested. And finally, we come to only a year before the start of the series. 2 Icewing princes, Winter and Hailstorm, were out doing shenanigans in Skywing territory before Skywings ambushed them. Winter got away, but Hailstorm was captured and taken to Scarlet, who had Chameleon put another Animus mask on him. The mask was a female Skywing named Pyrite, who was fiercely loyal to Scarlet and eventually started working as a spy in the Talons of Peace, along with Chameleon in his Icewing form Cirrus. Okay, that was a lot, but I think that's all for the setup. I'm currently 9 pages into my script, and we are finally able to begin the actual story of Wings of Fire. Chapter 7, The Dragonets of Destiny Arc, 5011 AS. Inside their mountain cave hideout, the 5 Dragonets of Destiny were being raised by Kestrel, Dune, and Webbs. There were some talks of escaping a couple years early, which were only solidified when Moroseer visited them for the first time. He declared Glory unfit to be a Dragonet of Destiny and ordered the Guardians to kill her. Luckily, Rainwings can camouflage, so Glory could hide while they thought of a plan. An underground river ran through their cave and presumably to the outside world. Clay, being a Mudwing, could hold his breath for up to an hour, so he and Tsunami were sent to find the river's exit, then come back to open the door to the cave from the outside and let everyone else out. They made it, but they bumped into Queen Scarlet, who trailed them back to the cave. Webbs escaped, Dune was killed, and Kestrel and the Dragonets were all captured. Kestrel was imprisoned, Clay, Tsunami, and Starflight were placed in Scarlet's Gladiator Arena, Glory was put on display as artwork on the arena balcony, and Sunny was set aside for Princess Byrne to take to her Weirdling Tower, a little collection she kept of draconic oddities she found. Clay soon met and befriended the arena champion Peril, and he witnessed her fire skills firsthand when she killed a SandWing in an arena match the next day. That night, Clay learned Starflight was next in line to fight the following day and volunteered to fight in his place, and he was pitted against an Icewing named Fjord. He struggled until Glory, unbeknownst to anyone, fired some venom from her perch on Scarlet's balcony to kill Fjord and save Clay. Next day was Kestrel's trial, during which Peril learned Kestrel was her mother. She defended Kestrel using a tradition called the Champion Shield, allowing her to fight on Kestrel's behalf in the arena to pardon her. Princess Byrne arrived that night to retrieve Sunny, and during a futile mission to rescue her, Clay accidentally touched Peril and was fine. This is how he learned he hatched from a blood-red Mudwing egg, which meant he was fire resistant. Next morning, it was Scarlet's hatching day, which Byrne stuck around for. Tsunami was pitted against Gill in the arena and killed him, not knowing he was her father. Scarlet sent Starflight to face her next, but after some brief moments of them refusing to fight, Moroseer arrived and took Starflight out of there, leaving the others behind. Scarlet was enraged and sent Peril to fight Clay for the Champion Shield match, but then Glory attempted to fire some venom at Byrne. Byrne decided to use Scarlet as a meat shield, resulting in Scarlet's face taking the venom shot and becoming horribly disfigured. In the chaos that followed, the remaining Dragonets managed to free Sunny and Kestrel, and they all fled the palace. Byrne left as well, with Scarlet in tow, and with the Skywing Queen gone and presumed dead, Princess Ruby unofficially ascended to the throne. Kestrel and the Dragonets went their separate ways before the Dragonets visited the Mud Kingdom, where Clay briefly met his mother and his troop of siblings. The group decided to head for the Sea Kingdom next, since Kestrel had revealed Tsunami was actually Queen Coral's daughter. Meanwhile, Moroseer called Kestrel to a meeting where it was revealed Moroseer had a secret alliance with Blister, who killed Kestrel and dumped her body in the ocean. When the Dragonets arrived in the Sea Kingdom several days later, Tsunami met Webb's son Riptide and Commander Shark. Once she revealed herself as the long-lost princess, she ordered them to bring her and her friends to Coral. They were taken to the Summer Palace where they met Coral, Anemone, and the royal scribe / Anemone's arranged fiancé, Whirlpool. Tsunami and Coral were called away from the palace briefly to investigate a dead skywing on the shore, which turned out to be Kestrel. A day later, Tsunami was swimming through an underwater tunnel when an unknown dragon attacked her. She told Coral, who became worried and decided to go check on the princess eggs in the Deep Palace. Sure enough, Orca's enchanted statue had claimed another baby's life, and Tsunami took the only egg left in the hatchery, promising to protect it. Princess Blister arrived the next day for a meeting with Coral, and Tsunami and Starflight figured out Blister was the one who murdered Kestrel because she accidentally let on that she knew how it happened. Soon after, Blister catches Webs in the Canopy, who had just returned to the Sea Kingdom after fleeing from Scarlet's attack a couple weeks prior. Coral believed Webs and Riptide were responsible for the murdered princess eggs, and she only agreed to let them go if Tsunami could find the real killer and prove their innocence. Tsunami locks herself in the royal hatchery with the princess egg, and Orca's statue comes to life and tries to kill her. She manages to trap it and open the door to get it to freeze again. During the battle, the egg she was guarding hatched, and the new princess would be named Auklet. Using Anemone's magic, Coral determines Orca was behind the killings, but then Blister convinces her to lock the Dragonets of Destiny up. Anemone comes to their rescue and enchants a spear to bring them the dragon that attacked Tsunami in the tunnel. It brings Whirlpool, and Anemone accidentally shoves him into a pool of electric eels, electrocuting him. Just then, Burns' forces arrive at the Summer Palace and start firebombing the place, having found its location from having a spy track Webs. Tsunami manages to free Webs and Riptide in the chaos, Riptide stays, and Webs goes with the Dragonets. On the way out, Webs takes a sting from Blister, so the group decides to head for the rainforest since the Rainwings aren't involved in the war and are the most likely to have remedies for SandWing venom. When they arrived in the rainforest, Glory met her half-brother Jambu after all of her friends got tranquilized, and while Webs was being treated, Glory was shown around the kingdom. As it turns out, the Rainwing Queen at the time, Queen Grandeur, had started letting her friends take turns being queen each month, hoping one of them would end up being worthy of the full-time position. The tribe in general had regressed a lot compared to their Darkstalker era counterparts. They forgot how to read and write, became incredibly lazy, and stopped keeping track of whose children were whose. Since their venom can be cancelled out by a blood relative, dragons who want to mate just do a quick test to make sure they're not related to prevent inbreeding. Once everyone was awake, Glory confronted that month's queen, Magnificent, demanding she do something about the kidnapped Rainwings, but Magnificent told Glory to do it herself instead. While investigating, they find one of Stonemover's enchanted tunnels, the one to the Sand Kingdom, and they head through it. A Rainwing named Mangrove follows them and runs off to try to find his partner Orchid, forcing the Dragonets to trail him all the way to the border with the Ice Kingdom. They meet Princess Blaze, and the Nightwing assassin Deathbringer arrives and tries to kill her, but he fails and everyone escapes. After returning to the rainforest, Glory uses herself as bait and gets kidnapped by the Nightwings, who take her to their volcanic island home. Glory meets one of the kidnapped Rainwings, Kinkajou, who escapes with her with the help of Clay and Deathbringer. When Glory returns, she challenges Queen Magnificent for the Rainwing throne, and it's revealed that their royal challenge is actually a series of contests instead of a fight to the death. Before the games began, Glory received a dream visit from Queen Scarlet, confirming she was still alive and in possession of one of the 3 dream visitors. Now for the royal challenge itself. Queen Exquisite defeats Jambu in tree gliding, a blind Rainwing Dragonet named Tamarin defeats Queen Fruitbat in flower gathering, Queen Magnificent defeats Glory in camouflage, Mangrove defeats Queen Dazzling in a fruit scavenger hunt, and with the score 2-2, it comes down to Kinkajou versus Queen Grandeur in venom shooting. However, a sloth falls onto the target board and Kinkajou jumps in to save it, causing her to take a venom shot from Grandeur. Glory thinks fast and tries using her own venom to neutralize it, which works, confirming she is actually a descendant of the rightful Rainwing Queen. In light of this, Grandeur officially forfeits and gives Glory the throne, and Glory gets to work readying her tribe for war to get their kidnapped dragons back, but not before the Nightwings secretly capture Starflight. After being taken to the island, Moroseer introduces Starflight to the backup Dragonets of Destiny: Ochre, Squid, Flame, Fatespeaker, and Viper. All of them but Fatespeaker take an instant dislike to Starflight. During training, Squid decides he's had enough and flies away, and Viper gets knocked into some lava during a battle, scratching Flame's face with her tail in the process. During this time, Starflight also finds the second Dream Visitor in an old treasury and uses it to briefly contact the Dragonets in the rainforest, until someone goes behind his back and steals it. One night, Starflight and Fatespeaker find their way to the room housing Queen Battlewinner in her lava cauldron, but she dismisses them after a brief conversation. The two of them also sneak out and convince a dragon guarding the rainforest tunnel to let them through to get the antidote for Flame's scratch. After the Dragonets all reunite, Glory makes a plan to storm the Nightwing Palace and rescue everybody. During the raid, the volcano starts to erupt, and Starflight and Glory take Princess Greatness to confront Battlewinner. Since Battlewinner obviously isn't making it to the rainforest in her cauldron, Greatness takes charge of negotiations and agrees to give the Nightwing tribe to Glory. Battlewinner tries to climb out of the cauldron and attack them in a fit of rage, but that causes the ice to finally take over her body and freeze her to death. Everyone else manages to escape the rainforest as the volcano erupts, except for Moroseer, who reveals to the Dragonets that their prophecy was fake before being engulfed by lava. Starflight also takes some lava to the face, permanently blinding him. Glory allows the Nightwings to establish a new village in the rainforest, which many of them accept since they're now otherwise homeless, and the mother-daughter pair Secret Keeper and Moonwatcher eventually work their way back into society after living alone for a few years. As everyone recovers from all that craziness, the Dragonets' faith in the prophecy is waning, while Sunny still believes in it. Sunny gets kidnapped by a trio of Nightwings, Starflight's half-sister Fierceteeth, her mate Strongwings, and a third called Prey Hunter, hoping to use Sunny as a bargaining chip. She escapes them, but decides to keep an eye on them for now, and she follows them to the Scorpion Den. She finally meets her mother Thorn, who kills Prey Hunter and sends Fierceteeth and Strongwings to prison. A SandWing named Adex arrives and takes Sunny hostage, taking her to Burn's stronghold until Thorn and her gang show up to free her. At the same time, Peril, having been exiled from the Sky Kingdom by Ruby, arrives to free Scarlet from Burn's Weirdling Tower. Afterwards, Sunny heads to Jade Mountain to meet her father Stonemover, and the following night she gets an accidental dream visit from a human girl named Ivy, the daughter of the Dragonslayer Heath and the holder of the third and final Dream Visitor. The next morning, Sunny goes to retrieve the Dream Visitor and then returns to her friends in the rainforest. The Dragonets of Destiny arrange a meeting with all the queens at the SandWing stronghold to officially choose a new queen. Blister offers Burn a gift, but it turns out to be a pair of Dragonbite Vipers which kill her and send everyone into a panic. Clay gets bit as well, but Peril returns to burn the venom out of his leg, saving his life but leaving that leg permanently crippled. While Blister and Blaze duke it out, Smolder's pet scavenger Flower, aka Rose, shows Sunny to the grave of Queen Oasis, where the Eye of Onyx happened to be buried for 20 years without anyone noticing. Blister grabs it, but since she's not worthy to be on the throne, it disintegrates her. Blaze is the only sister left alive, but Sunny gives the Eye of Onyx to Thorn and declares her the new SandWing Queen. The Eye doesn't react, meaning she's worthy, so the other queens all agree. And with that, the War of SandWing Succession was finally over. But before we wrap up this chapter, there's some human stuff we gotta go over. Remember Ren and Sky? Well, they ended up meeting Ivy, who discovered that her father Heath is a fraud. After an adventure I really don't want to recap, they confront Heath and he folds immediately upon seeing Sky, and that's the end of that. But Charcoal, I hear you ask, you can't just skip all of Dragonslayer like that? To which I say, yes the f*** I can, your tears give me strength. But that concludes the first arc of 3. I'm starting to wonder if trying to make this video was a terrible mistake. Chapter 8, The Jade Mountain Arc, 5012 AS. Our story picks up 6 months after Book 5 left off. In that time, the Dragonets of Destiny, plus Fatespeaker because she's become Starflight's assistant now that he's blind, and minus Glory because she now has 2 tribes to look after, decide to dig into Jade Mountain and turn it into a school, Jade Mountain Academy. The students are divided up into 5 winglets, all with 1 dragon from each of the 7 known tribes. The Jade Winglet consisted of the first Nightwing in centuries with telepathy and foresight, Moonwatcher, one of Queen Glacier's nephews and the brother of the missing Prince Hailstorm, Winter, the bubbly young Rainwing, Kinkajou, the secret animus Sea-Wing Prince, Turtle, Queen Thorn's adopted son, Qibli, one of Clay's brothers, Umber, and a grouchy Skywing named Carnelian. As far as major characters from the other winglets, the Gold Winglet contained Winter's sister Icicle, one of Clay's sisters Sora, a Nightwing named Bigtail, Flame of the False Dragonets of Destiny, and Onyx, the SandWing you may remember as the daughter of Palm, Smolder's forbidden love. The Silver Winglet had the animus Sea-Wing Princess Anemone, and the daughter of Thorn's general Sixclaws, Ostrich. Peril also showed up later after parting ways with Queen Scarlet but wasn't made an official student yet. Before the school opened, under Agate Mountain, Darkstalker had been sleeping for 2,000 years. When a comet passed overhead, it caused some tremors which broke the copper bracelet keeping Darkstalker asleep. He was now wide awake but still buried in the mountain, and with his magic still stuck in his scroll, he couldn't free himself. Once Moonwatcher arrived at Jade Mountain Academy, she began to hear a mysterious voice in her head which later revealed itself to be Darkstalker communicating with her telepathically. Moon was then struck with visions of a fire in the History Cave, soon followed by a very real explosion that destroyed the cave and killed 2 students, Carnelian and Bigtail. The bombing was orchestrated by Sora, who was targeting Icicle for killing one of her siblings back during the war. Umber would end up running away with Sora. It's been almost a full, real-life decade since this happened, and the 2 of them unfortunately haven't reappeared since. After the bombing, Moon revealed to her winglet that she had powers, and Turtle gave the group some Skyfire stones from his armband to shield their minds, much to Moon's relief. But the trouble wasn't over. Scarlet had been dream visiting Icicle and convinced her to kill the Dragonets of Destiny in exchange for Hailstorm's freedom. The Jade Winglet confronted her as she was attacking Starflight, and she fled the school for the rainforest to go after Glory instead. Moon, Winter, Qibli, and Kinkajou went after her. The group eventually found their way to the tunnel to the old Nightwing Island, where they found Icicle in bad condition. She still had her wounds from the fight at the Academy, and she hadn't been sleeping to avoid Scarlet. Glory arrived and tranquilized Icicle to arrest her, and Moon read her mind during the inevitable dream visit from Scarlet to find out where she and Hailstorm could be. They deduced she was in the claws of the Clouds Mountains somewhere and went to contact the Talons of Peace to find her location. The Talons gave them Pyrite, who unbeknownst to them was Hailstorm under an Animus mask. That night, the group came under attack by Scarlet's assistant Chameleon in his Nightwing form Shapeshifter. He knocked Kinkajou into a coma before Winter repelled him, and then Winter tore off Pyrite's necklace, causing the spell on it to deactivate and reveal Hailstorm. While Hailstorm slowly regained his memories, the group brought Kinkajou to Possibility, a town where dragons of all tribes came to live in peace. After admitting Kinkajou to a doctor, Winter took Hailstorm back to the Ice Kingdom. Winter was placed at the top of the Icewing rankings for rescuing his brother, and Hailstorm was placed at the bottom of the rankings for being gone so long. This led to Hailstorm challenging Winter to a diamond trial, and the two were sent into Foeslayer's cave. After realizing one of them was supposed to kill the other, they agreed Winter would leave and let everyone think he was dead. Once Hailstorm left the cave, Winter freed Foeslayer, who told him the story of how she and Arctic fell in love. Meanwhile, at Jade Mountain, Ruby arrived to retrieve Carnelian's body. During the visit, Scarlet showed up at the Academy briefly, prompting Peril to go after her. Turtle tagged along too to find the rest of his winglet. They reached Possibility, where Peril had a mid-air collision with Winter, who was returning from the Ice Kingdom with Foeslayer. Foeslayer flew away, and Turtle was forced to reveal himself as an Animus to heal Winter and stop him from dying. Peril gets upset and flies away again, and she runs into her father, Chameleon, who reintroduces her to Queen Scarlet. They give Peril a necklace enchanted to get rid of her fire scales, but it is also secretly enchanted to make Peril forget her friends and become obedient to Scarlet again. The trio returned to the Skywing Palace, where they imprisoned Ruby and took her son Cliff hostage. The young prince later escaped and freed Ruby, and during this confrontation, Peril realizes she's under a spell and removes her necklace. Ruby officially declares a royal challenge against Scarlet, but she starts losing until Peril realizes Ruby is also under a spell. She burns off Ruby's enchanted earring, turning her back into Tourmaline. Tourmaline manages to finish off Scarlet, officially solidifying her claim to the Skywing throne. Turtle showed up to help just in time to find the battle already over, and Tourmaline chose to have Chameleon change her back into Ruby in body only because it's what everyone knew. Before long, Chameleon escapes, and Peril and Turtle reunite with the rest of the Jade Winglet to hunt him down. They take Darkstalker's scroll, but allow him to keep the scraps with his other forms on them for now, and they stop for a rest at Agate Mountain. The group starts arguing over what to do with the scroll, so Peril decides nobody should have it and burns it up, unwittingly causing Darkstalker to get his powers back and release himself from the mountain. Turtle panics and enchants a stick to completely hide him from Darkstalker's awareness, so he ends up being immune to a spell Darkstalker casts to make everyone trust him. The group ends up back at the Academy, where Darkstalker starts handing powers out to the students, and Anemone reveals she's created a pair of bracelets that can control the weather. Those will be important in a bit. Shortly after, Moon and Darkstalker both get visions of someone trying to murder Stonemover. The culprit turns out to be Flame, who had the dream visitor that was stolen from Starflight back in Book 4. Darkstalker heals Stonemover, and that night, Turtle gets to talking with Qibli. He enchants Qibli's earring to make him immune to Darkstalker's magic, which causes Darkstalker to come knocking. Once he's gone, they realize Darkstalker's given himself the power to sense new spells being cast. The next morning, Moon, several other Nightwing students, Anemone, and of course Turtle follow Darkstalker to the Nightwing village in the rainforest, with Turtle using a set of enchanted slates to send notes back to Qibli. While Darkstalker talks with Glory about becoming king of the Nightwings, Fierceteeth and Strongwings return to attempt to assassinate Glory, but Darkstalker throws them in prison. During the rainforest visit, Turtle goes to the medical pavilion since Kinkajou had been moved there. He gets Anemone to cast a spell to finally heal her, and Turtle uses it as cover to sneak in his own spell to make Kinkajou immune to Darkstalker's magic. The next day, the whole group, now joined by Fierceteeth, Strongwings, and most of the Nightwing tribe, head for the ancient Night Kingdom. By this point, the place was falling apart, and some of the land had even crumbled into the sea, but they were determined to rebuild. Anemone and Darkstalker get into an argument, and Darkstalker sends her away. Turtle fears Anemone plans to kill their mother Coral and take the throne, so he chases after her to stop her. The two meet on an island, and Turtle reveals he made Anemone an Animus, kicking off a huge battle. After they cast so many spells, Darkstalker gets suspicious and summons every Animus on the continent to his throne room, aka himself, Turtle, Anemone, Stone Mover, and Jerboa III, who we talked about a while ago. Turtle reveals himself and gives his enchanted stick to Anemone so she can escape, but Darkstalker captures Turtle and strips him of his powers. Meanwhile, in a parallel universe where Qibli is the main character, we rewind to when Turtle and the others left the academy. Qibli and Winter are the only members of their winglet still there, and when they attend history class, Qibli notices Onyx and Ostrich are both missing. After a dream visit to Ostrich from Sunny, she figures out that his grandfather, the ruthless Scorpion Den crime boss Vulture, must be behind the kidnapping. Before he heads out, he grabs Anemone's weather bracelets and makes a bunch of copies of his enchanted earring using a bowl Turtle made to duplicate whatever's in it. He leaves some of the earrings to be given to the students, and he and Winter head to the Scorpion Den for a rescue mission. Turns out Vulture wanted Ostrich as a bargaining chip for Qibli to get him close to Queen Thorn, and since Onyx was the granddaughter of the late Queen Oasis through Smolder, she technically had a claim to the throne, and Thorn accepted her challenge. Qibli watched from the sidelines but didn't want Thorn to lose, so he used the weather bracelets to summon a sandstorm, which went out of control and forced everyone to take shelter. Onyx was injured during the incident, and Vulture escaped, so their plan to take the SandWing throne was over. Once that was over, Qibli and Winter were informed that the Icewings had been stricken with a plague, which they guessed came from Darkstalker, so Qibli left more earrings to immunize the tribe. The plague resulted in the death of Queen Glacier, who chose her daughter Snowfall to become the next Icewing Queen. Qibli then received a message from Turtle telling him he had been captured, so he and Winter headed for the Night Kingdom, finding Anemone on the way. Once they get there, they find Chameleon is also there, and Kinkajou helps them take the rest of his scroll pieces. Once they find Moon and tell her what Darkstalker did, she and Darkstalker argue, and Darkstalker declares war on the Icewings. The two sides clash at Jade Mountain, and Qibli tries to stop them by using the weather bracelets to summon a storm, but he stops once he realizes he could bring down the mountain. He has another idea, having Anemone cast a spell to briefly connect the minds of the Icewings and Nightwings to make them empathize with each other before teleporting them back to their respective homes. Darkstalker is furious and confronts Qibli, who tries to convince him that his actions were evil. Darkstalker returns to Jade Mountain to find his mother Foeslayer waiting for him, and she gives him a strawberry to eat. The berry had been enchanted by Kinkajou using the last scraps of the scroll to remove Darkstalker's memories and turn him into a powerless Rainwing-Nightwing hybrid baby, Peacemaker. Foeslayer decided to change her name to Hope and start a new life with Peacemaker in the rainforest. Back at the academy, Peril officially became the new Skywing of the Jade Winglet. Winter left the academy and went off to create a new town similar to Possibility called Sanctuary, where dragons of all tribes could live together. Qibli also planned on leaving the academy to become an advisor to Thorn, but Moon convinced him to come back. But the biggest player in this aftermath was Jerboa III, who was now convinced the dragons of this age no longer deserved Animus magic, and so she cast a spell to strip all current Animus dragons of their powers, including herself. Existing spells stayed in place and enchanted items still worked, but no new spells could be cast, which is unfortunate because magic would have been a really useful tool in the next arc. Chapter 9, The Lost Continent Arc, also 5012 AS. Meanwhile, in a parallel universe where Blue is the main character, Silkwing brother and sister Blue and Luna are growing up in Cicada Hive on Pantala. Silkwings have a unique trait. They're born without wings, but go through a metamorphosis at age 6 to grow wings and gain the ability to spin silk. Luna begins her metamorphosis and is revealed to have a power called Flame Silk, which is basically silk that can burn like fire. The Hivewings take Luna's cocoon and try to go after Blue as well, but a Hivewing named Cricket manages to help Blue hide. Cricket's egg was never injected with the Breath of Evil, so she was immune to Queen Wasp's mind control. With the help of Luna's boyfriend Swordtail, they escape to go find Luna, and they head for Wasp Hive, thinking she'd be held there. They hide in one of the greenhouses at the base of the hive and encounter a trio of Leafwings, the leader of the Poison Wings Belladonna, her mate Hemlock, and their daughter Sundew. They knew where the Flame Silk dragons and therefore Luna were being kept, but in exchange for that information, the group was tasked with stealing the Book of Clearsight from within the hive with Sundew's help. Swordtail, Cricket, and Sundew escaped with the book, but Blue was captured and taken to the underground Flamesilk factory where he witnessed Luna emerging from her metamorphosis and met their father Admiral. A couple days later, Swordtail, Cricket, and Sundew find the cave and free Blue and Luna. The group finally reads the Book of Clearsight and they realize Wasp has been lying about it since the prophecies ended over 1,000 years ago. The group encounters a small Hivewing patrol as a storm starts, and when Luna tries to use her Flamesilk, it somehow gets blown into a giant sail that causes the storm to swoop her away across the sea to Pyria. As this happens, Blue begins his own metamorphosis, and when he emerges a week later, the group heads for Jewel Hive to contact a rebel group known as the Chrysalis. Once that's done, they devise a plan and start painting the last page of the Book of Clearsight everywhere they could find to spread the message that Wasp was lying. Cricket gets chased by Hivewings and ends up in the hatchery where she witnesses Wasp injecting some eggs with the Breath of Evil. She saves an egg that was marked as an orphan, which later hatches into Bumblebee. After leaving Jewel Hive, the gang notices a fire in the distance, which they realize is the Poison Wings burning down Bloodworm Hive. They figure they may as well head for the Poison Jungle to meet the Leafwings, since they might be able to help stop Wasp. Meanwhile, in our universe, Luna washes up on the shore of Pyria near Jerboa III's hut, and a few familiar faces come to meet her. By now, everyone's noticed Animus magic is gone, but they come up with a different solution to check out what's happening on Pantala, have Turtle and Tsunami swim there to see for themselves. And back on Pantala, as our heroes navigate the Poison Jungle, Sundew reveals she has Leaf Speak. When they reach the Poison Wing village, Sundew sneaks out that night to see her girlfriend Willow. Queen Sequoia finds them and brings them back to the Sapwing village where Sundew meets Tsunami and Turtle. Belladonna later brings Cricket and Swordtail to the village, and Sequoia orders Cricket, Sundew, Willow, and a couple other Leafwings to go find the old advisor Hawthorne in the center of the jungle. Once they reach him, he claims to have found a cure for the Breath of Evil, which he called the Heart of Salvation. They return to the Poison Wing village and set up the plant to be burned in front of an impending legion of Hivewings, but it turned out the Heart of Salvation was actually the Breath of Evil in disguise. The fire was already lit, and Blue, Swordtail, and dozens of Leafwings fell under the other mind's control. It took control of Hawthorne and attacked the group, forcing Sundew to kill Hawthorne to prevent it from using his Leaf Speak. Sundew, Cricket, Tsunami, Turtle, a handful of Leafwings, and hundreds of Silkwings who were being freed by the Chrysalis had to evacuate Pantala immediately, and the Pyrian dragons led them east to the other continent. In the Ice Kingdom, Glacier's daughter Snowfall was struggling with the responsibilities of being a brand new queen. She ventured into their vault of enchanted items and grabbed a few things, one of them being a ring called the Gift of Vision. This would cause Snowfall to be given visions of other dragons' memories and therefore allow her to develop empathy. The Pantalan evacuees landed in the Ice Kingdom, and Snowfall brought them south to Jerboa's hut where Luna was. Most of them stayed there, but a handful of dragons traveled to the new settlement Sanctuary. While there, Snowfall encountered none other than Ren and Sky, and a meeting is later called for all the queens to figure out what exactly they're gonna do about the Othermind. They decide to send a dragon from each tribe on a mission to find the source of the Breath of Evil and destroy it, since Snowfall saw it in a vision. You know, the Abyss, that cave I mentioned forever ago. And Ren somehow convinces the dragons not to attack humans anymore. The roster going to Pantala consisted of returning favorites Tsunami of the Sea Wings, Moonwatcher of the Night Wings, and Qibli of the Sand Wings, Pantalan dragons Luna of the Silk Wings, Cricket of the Hive Wings, and Sundew of the Leaf Wings, newer Pyrian characters Sky of the Sky Wings, Ren representing humanity, and Lynx of the Ice Wings, and brand new on-the-spot characters Pineapple of the Rain Wings and Bullfrog of the Night Wings. After returning to the Ice Kingdom, Snowfall decides to destroy the Great Ice Cliff guarding their southern border, which was keeping them safe from a potential Othermind invasion, and the Ranking Wall, which was a problematic system, but also one of the only things that made the Icewing Society unique, so yeah. She gets one last vision of Jerboa III's backstory leading up to her disabling Animus magic, and she decides to keep that knowledge to herself because of course she does. Upon reaching Pantala, the team came under attack from some Hivewings, and Tsunami, Moon, Qibli, and Pineapple were all captured and taken to Wasp Hive. Sundew and Lynx later separated from the group to go after them, leaving only Luna, Cricket, Ren, Sky, and Bullfrog. They enter into a cave system to find the Abyss, where they encounter a human village and meet up with some dragons from the Chrysalis who were in hiding. When one of Cottonmouth's servants drags a Dragonet into the Abyss, Luna dives in after them and comes face to face with Cottonmouth and Lizard. She falls under the Othermind's control and ends up in a little mind space thing to talk to them, where Cottonmouth explains the story of the Scorching. Meanwhile, the captured team members came face to face with Wasp, and Pineapple bought them time to escape by venoming her face, Queen Scarlet style. As the group got closer to the Abyss, Moon was able to enter the mind space without being infected thanks to her telepathy. With Moon's help, Luna showed Lizard several dragons' memories to show her that not all dragons were evil, and Lizard in turn told Luna that severing the main vine of the Breath of Evil would destroy the plant and save everyone, but kill Lizard and Cottonmouth in the process. By now, a battle was raging outside, and with so many dragons to control, Cottonmouth was distracted enough to allow Luna to move her real body and cut Cottonmouth's vine using silk. But this left Lizard alive, and Lizard insisted that the whole vine needed to be destroyed or it would just use her leaf speak to regrow. Luna assured Lizard that she would be remembered, but by a new name, Freedom. Freedom agreed, and Luna cut the last vine, freeing all of the dragons under the other mine's control. She burned away the last roots using flame silk, and the entire plant shriveled up and died. The world was finally saved. Outside of the Abyss, Wasp's rule over Pantala was broken. She survived the venom attack, but she was imprisoned and her cousin Jewel took over as the new Hivewing Queen. The Silkwings were released from their oppression under the Hivewings, and they chose to form a new joint nation with the Leafwings, the Leaf Silk Kingdom. Though one has to question why it's called a kingdom when its governing body is apparently an elected assembly. And this is where the main series ends for now. A fourth arc is confirmed to be coming, but we don't know when or what it'll be about. We just have a little more to go. Chapter 10, Epilogue, 5013 AS, Series Present Day. This is another thing where we don't have confirmed dates, but I'm placing it during the year following Arc 3 just to give everyone a good bit of downtime as things get settled. In the ancient Night Kingdom, some of the Nightwings who had followed Darkstalker chose to remain there, and they founded a new settlement called Renewal, led by Fierceteeth. Over at Jade Mountain Academy, Starflight decided to update the guide to the dragon tribes to include the Pantalan tribes, but he realized existing accounts of every tribe were pretty biased. The original Guide to the Dragons of Pyria, which the Dragonets of Destiny had grown up with, was written by the Nightwings, not exactly a reputable source anymore. Starflight had made some edits to it when the Academy opened, but nothing major. And the Pantalan Dragon Guide was written by the Hivewings, another biased source. So he decided to start fresh, and call for dragons across both continents to submit first-hand passages about their own tribes to include in the brand new Guide to the Dragon World. The publishing of this guide in-universe is currently the most recent canon event in Wings of Fire until Arc 4 eventually comes out, so at long last, this is where our story ends. This is officially the new biggest video I've ever made, and man, what a journey. I want to thank all of you for 4 years of this channel, those who have been around since the beginning, and those of you who may have just found me recently. Unfortunately, you might notice this isn't actually coming out on the anniversary. The real date is August 27th, and this is coming out on the 31st, but between jobs, classes starting back up, and a vacation, I really needed the extra time to finish this behemoth of a video. I might end up needing a quick break after this, who knows. But with that, thank you for visiting Charcoal's Den, and thanks again for 4 years, and I'll see you all in the next video. Special thanks to my supporters on Patreon. If you want to support the channel, you can pledge at the link in the description for perks such as your name in the credits and early access to new videos.